So without further ado, I'm going to introduce the incredible Tim Banks.
So my voice can kind of carry, but if we could have some folks kind of smooshing back toward the front, because I don't want to stand here and I don't want to carry one. So I'd rather like walk around here and talk like this, but I want to make sure everybody can hear me. So if you can't hear me good right now, let's come forward. They can hear me on the stream because I'm wearing a lavalier. But yeah, if you're having a hard time hearing, I just want to be closer, more clear like this, because I'm a pacer. I pace and I talk and I use my hands. So holding the microphone makes it real difficult for me. Thank you, ADHD. The other thing is that I want to take a second to shout out Danny for doing this, because I don't think, as someone who's done conference organizing before, I don't think people really appreciate how difficult it is to pull off a conference in general, but to pull one off in 3 months it's unheard of, right? So I really think, I don't know if Danny's here, but I really think Danny should hear you put your hands together for Danny for this conference. Yeah, no, when he said he was doing this, and I was like, when? And then he said, when? I'm like, no, really, when? And he was like, no, I'm serious. I was like, okay, I'm in, I'll do it. But, you know, we know what you have going on. So without, I guess, further ado, let me take this down. I've got slides or something like that here. They made me use Teams, which should be a war crime. Sorry, Microsoft folks, but facts are the facts. All right. All right, who's real good at this thing? Play. Oh, there we go. All right. I don't want. All right, here we go. All right. So I want to talk to you today about context. So first off, context of who I am. My name is Tim Banks. I'm a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner. I'm going to get out of the way now because I'm going to talk about this a lot. I've been training for 7.5 years. I'm a brown belt. I am the 5-time Pan American champion, which means I'm the champion for all the Western Hemisphere, including Brazil. And Brazilians feel some type of way when you beat them at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I'll tell you what. That's 5-time consecutive. 3-time American national champion, 3-time silver medalist in the world championships. And I've got so if you ever catch me on a Zoom, I put all the medals behind me so I don't have to repeat myself when I talk. I'm also a tech nerd. I'm not here because of my good looks. I'm got 28 years in the industry, done a lot of typing. But what I do mostly is I problem solve, because that's why we're here, right? I'm also a chef, construction worker. I've done a lot of various careers, musician. I was in the military, so I've done a lot of things, and I've seen a lot of the circles overlap. So we're going to talk about that a little bit, okay? And also the last part, very important. I'm here mostly because I am a prolific shit poster. Like, just you can, my Twitter handle will be archived here probably within the next few months, but go enjoy it while you can. I've got some bangers on there, but I'm on Blue Sky now, so the bangers will be there from now on. All right. So this is me. Where you're usually going to find me sitting down, tired, on the mat. This is where I spend a lot of my free time. I was talking about this position yesterday. So I look like I'm pretty relaxed here, having a good time. So, and a lot of us sit like this, right? So the thing about jiu-jitsu is there's this notion of, you know, people think about takedowns and throwing people down, which is something you do in judo. Jiu-jitsu is different in that you do all that, but also you have a notion of a guard, right? So when I'm on the ground and someone's like over me, I can still defend myself, right? A guard can look a lot like a lot of things. It can look like me wrapped around, stuff like that. But this position I'm in is actually my favorite guard. It is an open guard. It's called technically a seated asymmetrical butterfly guard. You don't need to know that. It just looks like an old man sitting on the ground. But it's also really hard to attack me. And if anybody thinks I'm lying, they can come up here right now and try. We'll see. But I think it's important to note, because the context of me just sitting here, you know, like this, doesn't seem like much until you put somebody in front of me, right? And that's what I kind of want to talk to you about today. The things we do, right, have to have some kind of context. Otherwise, why are we doing them? Right? So I've won a lot of medals. They're not all gold, right? I've won some bronzes. One thing I'm notorious for not doing is I don't celebrate like on the stand. Like if I win or lose, it doesn't matter. I'm gonna have the same reaction. So if you see pictures of me like right after a fight, you can't tell if I won or lost. You get me on the podium, you can't tell how bad the fight was. I'm gonna be every time, right? I am not this guy, but I have seen this guy. I have beaten this guy, right? But you know, and no shade, to be happy to be there. But also, when you see it in context of how you did, sometimes it looks a little silly. Context matters in all things, even language, right? And I think it's interesting because we all, as tech nerds, we have our own jargon. We have things we say, things we do that mean something to us. Coding is a great example of one. You know, like we talk about like retrospectives. We have all our agile language and stuff like that. Epics, and epics are never really actually epic. But we have them when we talk about them, but we do this all in a common understanding of context that we have when we speak, right? Who speaks French? Is Sophia here today? She's not. Does anyone speak French? Why is this funny?
Well, no, yeah, I don't speak French, but
Oh,
pain is
yeah. So in French, pi is bread, like pain au levain, right? And so I think it's funny because I used to be a chef, so I understand that pain is French. I mean, well, yes, pain is French, but also like, but the context matters. Like, we can say things. We talked about our jargon. We talked about how we say things within our community and our culture, but language matters too. Words have meanings, right? As someone who speaks routinely to Portuguese people, you know, and words saying different things, and so. When you're talking to someone, it helps to be very clear about the context of what you're saying and add context to the word because the word itself can mean something different to somebody else. So it helps to have things around it so they can pull onto it. Now, context matters in application development. Why? I'm writing a function, you're writing a library. Why does context matter? And I'll tell you why. And something I have said in the past, again in my prolific shit posting, but it's true. All right, who's doing that? Is that coding without context is masturbation? Because you're just writing something and you don't know why. The only person you're pleasing with your writing is yourself in that moment. And that matters because if I'm writing a function that fits in a library, that fits in an application, or it fits in a service, that fits in an application, that fits in this infrastructure, I need to know why that's important. I need to know how it fits. Otherwise, what I'm writing and what I'm putting effort into may not be the right thing, right? And this becomes very, very important because when we are writing an app, or whether we're deploying infrastructure, or whether we are trying to fix something, we need to know what it's important for. Why does this do, right? I used to work for a company called Object Rocket. One of our largest company was this little plucky startup called Tinder. And maybe you've heard of Tinder, maybe you haven't. Tinder's mostly known for, how should we say, bringing people together. And this becomes important because as I'm doing DevOps and SRE in this moment, so we're talking to the guys at Tinder, and if these guys there were some party boards out of LA. They didn't write this app because they were tech nerds. They had other purposes in mind when they wrote this app. But the thing they asked me is like, well, how do you know when this app is up or how do you know when this app is down? I was like, well, we have these metrics and blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, but like, do you have the app on your phone? And no, because at the time I'm married with kids and stuff like that. And he's like, well, then how can you tell me it's up, right? So yeah, so we all put Tinder on our phones and had to have that conversation when we got home about it. But it made perfect sense because I can say, well, these metrics say that the performance is fine. The database is fine, right? The application is responding or whatever, like it's all within our metrics, but the user experience wasn't fine. And that was what was important, right? When you are some dude and it's 1:30 in the morning and you're trying to figure out, what you're going to do for the rest of the evening, and you're not having a good user experience, it kind of matters. Now, for us, I'm asleep at 1:30. So if you're going to wake me up, why are you waking me up? Well, what is the user experience? All these things kind of matter when someone's paying you to fix this thing or to host this thing or to have any kind of service you're providing them. I want to know why you're getting it. I want to know what you're using it for. It is going to help me from an operational standpoint all the way down from being the person who's writing the function. I think the other thing that really helps us out when we're doing this for application development is as I write things, as I change things, I have preconceived notions. I have ideas and assumptions that I make about something I'm writing, right? When we get requirements, right? You get requirements, it's going to do this, it's going to do this, it's going to do this, right? And if you just write based on requirements, you're going to get something that meets the requirements, but is it what you needed, right? And do we know why the requirements are the requirements? Do we know why we needed these things? Now, you're going to ask yourself, well, I'm just a junior dev. All I do is write functions. I'm 6 months out of boot camp. I don't need to know all these kinds of things. Well, yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. And I'll give you a good example. So back to jujitsu. We have different techniques that we teach. Jiu-jitsu is a collection of techniques that does a lot of things, right? But they all have underlying fundamentals that they rely on to work, right? So if I'm going to do what's called a scissor sweep, right? Or I'm gonna take you from the top, I'm gonna put you on your back and get on top of you, right? I can teach any one of you to do a scissor sweep in about 2 minutes, right? And you will be able to do a scissor sweep on someone who is not actively resisting you or a dummy or by yourself, right? But if I put someone there in front of you, you're not going to do it because all you know is the list of requirements I gave you on how to do a scissor sweep. Well, that's all well and good for if you're just doing it for practice, but when you're doing it for real, it's not going to work. Well, why doesn't it work? Because you don't know why you're putting your hand here. You don't know why you're turning your hips that way. You don't know why you're pulling into it. So you don't have the context for it. And so the difference what makes the difference between me telling you how to do this thing on a drill and you actually being able to do it is all context, right? So when I'm writing this code, yeah, sure, I can write this thing, it's do this, it's gonna do this, it's gonna do this, it's fine. But when it's under load and when I have to deploy it across these things, or when it goes from this CPU type to this CPU type, or when disk is full or anything like that, what does that thing do now? Does it actually do what I wanted it to do? If the answer is no, right, then it didn't meet the requirements, did it? So context matters when you're writing code and when you're deploying code and stuff like that. Let's talk about product management. Do we have any product managers out here? Project managers? Oh, okay. Okay, cool. So we can talk shit. All right. So, and if you're online, I can't see you. So, but there comes a time in project management where you're getting roadmap items, right? And say, okay, we're going to do this. These are roadmaps. We're going to do this, this, and this, and this, and this, and this. Okay, that's all well and good. That's some context for the engineers, right? Because you have, oh, well, this epic goes with this ticket goes with this epic that goes with that. Those are forms of context, right? But is it really what we need, right? Why is this roadmap item a roadmap item? Does anyone know the number one reason that things get on roadmap items? Anyone? Sales. Things get on the roadmap items so you can sell it. Sales drives features. Customer A will buy this thing if it can do this, right? Well, the salesperson is going to sell it to them. Now, maybe it's there, maybe it's not. I don't know. Has anyone ever worked for a company where you had to deliver something that was already sold? Right? And I think that becomes very interesting because that is the most real example of context you'll ever have. Why am I doing this? Well, because they already paid for it, right? So things get on the roadmap items because of sales, number one reason. But not only because of sales, right? Things get on the roadmap items because of technical debt. Things get on roadmap items because of marketing, right? Things get on roadmap items because we had something like we have a business change, right? If you work for a company that's doing migrations off of a data center into cloud, or migration off a cloud back in the data center, right? Those aren't usually because someone sells, it's usually some kind of business context, right? Where I think this really matters is when these product managers talking about user stories and they're going out and getting the data. Who do they get the data from? Does anybody know? What's that?
Engineers.
Sometimes engineers, right? But what do engineers buy?
Computers.
Not an enterprise engineers buy nothing, right? Your CFO buys stuff. Your VP of engineering buys stuff, right? Your your finance folks, they buy stuff. Engineers have opinions for sure, right? There's one thing engineers have, it's opinions. But they don't buy anything. So what is the context for this product? Is it the engineers? It's the users? That's what we hope, right? But 9 times out of 10, it's gonna be the person who says, we will buy it if it does this. We will buy it if it costs this. It will buy it if you can deliver this, right? So the context for the product isn't always whether it has the best features or not, right? The context for why people develop something, why they sell something, isn't always because it is the best performing, right? The context for what it is because me, as a person who's consuming this thing, is going to make a difference for my bottom line, for my strategic goals, for my investors, right? When you think Gen AI, you think everyone's using Gen AI because it's the best thing? Or how many people's investors or boards saying, like, we want to be on Gen AI, right? Who here has been in long enough into the industry when people first started migrating into AWS and cloud providers? How many of them actually needed it? What percent do you think actually needed to get into the cloud? Maybe, yeah, maybe 20 to 30% of people actually, even to this day, needed to go in the cloud, but they were mandated because the board wanted them to do it, right? But that's context for why you do it, right? Now, I work for a company called Calent. Calent is a professional service provider. I do pre-sales engineering, right? That is all context. The only reason I am there is to get context for what we're gonna have the delivery team do. Now, that doesn't involve the size of instances or what their technology stack is or they want to go from this to this or whatever, right? 90% of the things I'm trying to figure out are whose job is on the line if we don't get this done? What is the political landscape in the company for this? What are the pressures you're on? Are you trying to get acquired? Are you trying to make an acquisition? Do you have a new CEO? Do you have a new boss in here? That's the context for why we do things. People who make decisions to do these things don't just do it in a vacuum. There's a reason, and that reason is almost never technology. So let's talk about this leadership and management portion. Do I have any engineering managers or up in here? Or business managers and business leaders, right? Now, for most of them would say 90% of their job is all context, either getting context or giving context, right? And that's a whole different set of skills. It's a whole different way of looking at things other than just, is it this feature? Is it that feature? Does this work? Does that work, right? A lot of business leaders operate in a place where they are both being shit on and shitting on other people, right? They have things that come in from the board. This is really screaming. Sorry. So, seizure warning for anybody else. Please don't look that way. That's kind of disturbing. They're getting context and pressure from the board. They're getting context and pressure from investors. They're getting context and pressure from other leaders in that business. They're getting context and pressure from people below them, right? We're having staffing issues. We're having hiring issues. There's a global pandemic on. We got to get everybody, to remote, and how do we manage that? All these things provide context for all the decisions that they make, right? Why that's important for them to know? Well, because that's their job. But why is it important for me as an IC to know that they have context? They have context behind things that I'm not privy to. Why is it important for me? Because when they make decisions, right, I want to know why, or I should know why, because now I have context for what I'm going to do. Hey, I need you to take somebody's on call, right? Now, who here, did anyone work on call before? It's not great sometimes. It's, on the best situations, it's okay. Sometimes it's nightmarish, right? But when I've been asked to take somebody else's on call, right, I don't always need to know why. Sometimes I shouldn't know why. But when they're saying like, hey, you need to take on call, like, you know, person has a sick family member. Like, I got you, dog. That's no problem for me. No sweat off my back. I'm gonna help you out, right? You know, so-and-so needs to take PTO. This happened, that happened, you know, no problem. Now, that's fine and well. But who here's had to take on call because the other on call just wasn't responding for no reason? Because I have. How do you feel about that? Feels a lot different. Feels a lot different. But leadership management has to have awareness of these things, and they have to give context to you to the extent that they can, and it helps matters. Who here's ever been laid off? All right, yeah, same. Who here knew the layoff was coming? That's a different number, right? Now, I will point this at leadership, because even if you don't know that you are the one getting laid off, you should know if the numbers are good. You should know if this business decision could lead to that, right? Now, those of us who are long enough to have been through this a few times, we see the writing on the walls, right? We know what it looks like. Oh, we cut down, for those, Deborah will understand this one. Hey, we cut down the budget for this conference. So we can't go to this conference, or it's only salespeople, or it's only marketing people, right? Yeah, we actually need you to scale back to flying economy only for this overseas flight. There are all these things that give you like, oh, this is enough clues. Now I have context from everything that I've done in the past that this don't look right, right? But it shouldn't be a surprise to you, right? It shouldn't be a surprise, but it often is. So let's talk about that, our careers for a second. What do I mean about context in our career? Now, I've been doing this for 28 years. I've had a lot of different roles in those 28 years, whether it's been systems administration, back then when infrastructure as code was like a tarball that you would FTP from server to server. I've been doing database administration when MySQL was still newish. I remember MongoDB 0.92 was the first time I used it. I remember before AWS existed. Like I've seen a lot of these things when DevOps didn't exist, right? So I've seen a lot of these things come to fruition. I've seen a lot of things that are taken for common as granted as how we do things now when they were still new. I've seen how they progressed, right? But with all that said and all that done, it doesn't prevent you from getting laid off. It doesn't mean you're going to get promoted. It doesn't mean you're going to get all these roles, right? And the reason why having context for my career matters, right, is because I know none of that has anything to do with me, right? I'm not standing here right now because I'm the best engineer, because I'm not. I'm not standing here right now because I'm the best public speaker, because I'm not. I'm not standing here because I'm the best looking person in every room I'm in, which I am, but that's not why I'm here. I'm here because like I figured some things out, and that's all it is. And what I figured out, the main thing I figured out is that when it comes to my career, 90% of whatever happens in my career is not about me, right? There are decisions beyond my control, right? There are things that I had not only input on, right? But that are happening to people regardless of how good or bad they are, right? And the most important thing is that my career doesn't define who I am, right? So having context for my career is having context for what my job means in my life, right? What my job means in my life is how I pay my bills. And it's not the only way I can pay my bills, right? What it doesn't mean in my life is, am I a good person? Do I have worth or do I have value? Am I a good parent? Am I a good partner? Am I a good neighbor? Am I a good friend? Work has nothing to do with that. Absolutely nothing to do with that. And that is a hard thing for a lot of people, especially young in their career, to understand, because the common wisdom is that you got to grind, you got to put it out, you got to do, the startup life with the 60-hour, 70-hour, 80-hour weeks. So that is the thing that we're socialized in this industry to do. And your work becomes your life. But why do we do this? Now, when you go back to my biography slide, right? What was the first thing I put in there? Jiu-jitsu. Yeah, that's what I do, right? If you ask me what I do, it's jiu-jitsu. I am a 5-time Pan American champion, right? That's the thing. When I'm dead in my grave, those 5 medals are still going to be there. You know what I'm saying? Hopefully it'll be 6. But they're still going to be there, right? You know what no one's going to talk about? How many CI/CD pipelines I deployed? How many containers I deployed? How many functions did I write? No one cares, right? It won't even be there anymore. We don't write anything that persists unless you write COBOL. But none of that stuff matters in my life, right? And so I have context for my career and what it means. So what does that allow me to do? It allows me to kind of be a little more free. I can make better decisions because they're not personal decisions. Like, I have friends that I work with, right? I have some great friends I've met at work, but my work is not my family. I'll have those friends whether I work there or not. So when people say like, oh, why do you keep working here even though it's bad? Well, because my friends are there. If they're your friends, they'll still be there, right? Context in your career gives you the insight and it gives you the vision down the road you need to make good decisions about your career, right? That are not based in your own value or your own worth. And that is regardless of where you are in the org chart, right? Whether you're the junior developer, whether you're the CEO, right? Even if that is your own business, that is your business, that is not you. And I think this all comes to, this all comes down to the point that one of the main things that we do in this business, we're better at anything else, is burning people out. The only people that burn themselves out worse than us are the medical career, right? Because we operate mostly long hours in front of screens, sitting down, and on caffeine, I guess, mostly caffeine. We have a way of doing high cognitive load, high stress, and poor overall like health as far as like being outside and getting some rays on your face. And the combination of those are really bad for burnout. And I've seen people will often burn out like once, twice in their careers. I've seen people burn out every job that they're in, right? And it shortens your career, shortens life. Our mental health in tech is not great, to be fair, right? And I think it's interesting because so one thing about me is I don't know if you know, but I'm very open about mental health. I'm very open about my mental health struggles, very open about, my mental illness and stuff like that. The last time I gave a talk was a keynote a year and a half ago, right? So this is my first talk since then. And between then, I had almost like a life-ending mental health problem, right? So for me to be able to come, the context were so it's interesting for me, I'm talking about this because when Danny was like, hey, do you want to give a keynote, right? On my first talk back, right? I was like, all right, yeah, I guess I can do it, right? But everything that I've been through in that time since then was kind of like, yeah, I can do that. This is going to be easy, right? Little context like that. Now, it may seem unrelated, right? As to having to go through a bunch of stuff and then coming up and giving a talk, but it's not, right? Because doing this, and there's enough DevRels here that'll tell you that even talk ain't easy. It is not. It's hard. And you should do it. So, but once you get the hang of it, it's not bad. But I think what becomes important when we talk about this job, for what I am mostly as a DevRel, right, is that we're very out there. Our job is to put ourselves out there. Our job is to be very vulnerable, right? And in the end, that's all of our jobs to some extent. Who here has ever done a PR? Who here has ever had someone absolutely destroy their pull request? Yeah. How does that feel? Yeah, no, it's not great. It's not great. But if you told someone that this is a very vulnerable moment for you, I'm giving my work to someone for them to pick apart and tell me everything that's wrong with it. Like, it is very easy to get emotionally attached to that, right? And it's hard. But without that, if you told somebody, oh, I submitted a PR and it got torn up, they're like, okay, you know. But if someone said, hey, I submitted my novel to an editor and they absolutely destroyed it, right? People can be like, oh, wow, man, that's rough, blah, blah, blah. And that's all it is. Your code is your work. And it's all right to be sensitive about it. What does Erykah Badu say? I'm an artist and I'm sensitive about my shit, right? It's okay. It is okay to be sensitive about your work, but you have to put that in context of what it is. My code is my work, is what I've offered to you, and it got torn apart, but it is not who I am. If somebody shreds my PR, I'm not going to feel great about it, but it doesn't devalue me as a person. It doesn't even devalue me as an engineer, right? Because if you go in there and expect it to be right all the time, man, that's not what we do. Who here is a senior principal level? Who here is a senior principal that has submitted code and how it got torn apart? Yeah, no, it doesn't change. It doesn't change. The thing about it is it doesn't get easier. This job doesn't get easier. You just get better at it, right? And I think that's what's important to note is that you become, by practice, more resilient at doing these things, right? Whether you're a developer, whether you're a project manager, whether you're a leader, whether you're a person, right? So I think when we're to kind of wrap this all up, we should be looking for context in all the things we do, right? We should be looking for the why. We should be asking why. And if you don't know why, and the person you don't know, if the person you're asking doesn't know why, and then you can then ask them, like, don't you think it's important for you to know why, right? And it's not like, oh, it's not your business, it's not your role as a junior. Yeah, it is. Yeah, I should actually know. I should know what this has to do with the company strategy. Do you know what your company strategy is? Right? Because you should, because that's why you're there, right? You should know what this roadmap item has to do with this. You should know what customer asked for this thing, right? And what they do, right? Get context for what you do, and it's going to make the things you do more meaningful. It's going to make you do the things more efficiently because you're going to have more data to make that decision, right? And it's going to shorten the pipeline between thinking about something, doing something, and then having it be ready for production, right? So I'm going to, like, this is me. If you want to, those are my socials. That's catching me what I normally do. Nice. So at this point, does anyone know what time it is? Because I don't have a clock. Okay, so we got some time. Does anybody have any questions for me about anything? Tech, not tech, jujitsu, whatever. Yeah, what you got? Mm-hmm.
No matter.
Yeah. 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 Okay, so for the folks on Listen Stream, the person here works in a job that's not in tech, has problems getting context for the things that they're working on, and people don't kind of want to give you that. I think the main thing for you to explain to them is why the context is important for you, right? And you can just tell them, it's like, look, I'm going to do this thing, and that's fine, and maybe I get it right, but I'm going to luck into getting it right. If you give me some context for it, I'm more likely to get it right, and I'm more likely to get it right sooner than if I'm just, shooting in the dark. Give me a guiding star for my efforts, and that guiding star is going to be context. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so the question was, as a junior at your company, how do you get the conversation started about getting more context for things when it involves other teams and other groups, kind of a siloed situation, right? So I will say that while DevOps is a thing in tech, and DevOps is like 15 years old or whatever, what his birthday party was for it, DevOps is a solved problem everywhere else, right? If you ever worked in a kitchen, right, where you've got a saucier, a garde manger, you've got your executive, you've got your, that's DevOps. That's all. It's collaboration, right, and cooperation to do a thing that has to be out when everyone's pieces are delivered, right? They do that all day long. Assembly lines do that all day long. Construction workers do that all day long. Everyone does DevOps right-ish, right? They're going to complain about it, but if they were to come into tech and look at what we do, they'd be like, ugh, right? It's a solved problem because they don't use as many tools for abstraction and obfuscation of having a conversation that we do. They don't have Slack in a kitchen, right? They don't have GitHub in a kitchen. I'm gonna walk over here and be like, hey man, I need you to fire this plate. What's going on? Are you in the weeds like that? They have the conversation, right? If you're in an office, go have the conversation. If you're remote, that's fine. Slack somebody, right? And it's okay. It's like, hey, I'm G, blah, blah, blah. I saw this thing. I just want to ask you a couple questions about it so I know I have everything right, right? It's going to take a little bit of vulnerability and putting yourself out there, right? But I mean, especially as a junior, you have really nothing to lose. The expectations are super low, right? And that's not a read. That's the facts, right? People are gonna go in there. You're expected to ask questions. It's better when you ask questions as a junior, right? Now, it's never bad to ask questions at any point, but as a junior, ask the dumbest questions you can think of because they're not dumb. Everyone's gonna expect you to have dumb questions because you're a junior just starting out, right? Most people are gonna be happy that you said, hey, I saw this thing and I need some more context for this. So I know I can make reference. Perfect, great. But you gotta like, go. And sometimes too, the people don't know who you're supposed to ask. And now you get to do a little project, figure it out, map it out, get your documentation together on how to do that.
Maybe doesn't have a lot of information people either. So the meetings kind of very quick. And they don't get a chance to ask a lot of questions. A good piece of advice I got was to try to get to know the manager a little more in the moment, kind of like, hey, how was the weekend? What did we do this weekend? We do, because that personal connection with them allows the conversation to go a little bit further, even just in the meeting, giving me more time just to ask the context questions.
So I like that. I'll get you in just 1 second. The thing that I do whenever I do, and I record a lot of podcasts, right? The thing that I always do, usually before the camera's off, and if you ever heard a podcast, they'll talk about this. I will talk 15, 20 minutes with the people doing the podcast about whatever before they ever turn it on. I'm gonna be like, hey, that's a cool thing you have back there. Tell me about that chair. Oh, I like that keyboard, blah, blah, blah. I want to get to know, I want you to tell me something about yourself, and I'm gonna start getting some insights about you from those things, right? Because people are gonna put stuff, like I put my medals behind me, like I said in the thing. It's like, oh, what are those medals for? Oh, there's jiu-jitsu. And then I'm gonna give you a good tight 5 minutes about the history of Brazilian jiu-jitsu, right? Long enough so people are like, I get it, bro, I get it. But it tells you something about me. I want to know something about you, so I have some context for the things on how to relate to you, right? And so, yeah, it is a good idea to like, it doesn't all have to be, because this is business, right? It doesn't have to be all business, right? We're all here for some reason, right? I want to know something about you so I have a way to relate to you, right? Because that's context for me. That's context for my relationship with you. It's how I ask questions about you. It's how I get insights, right? So yeah, it is a great idea to just, hey, that's a really cool shirt. Have you ever been skiing before? Like those kinds of things. Like collect data on people, right? And it's not like, yes, it is collecting data on people, but it matters because they matter. You see them as more than just a resource to get a thing done. And that's important for us.
Thank you for taking my question. I identify with a lot of volunteer specifically. I kind of came to tech in a roundabout way. So I have a lot of context from my previous career as a people project manager and outsourcing.
Now, what were you when I was asking as a project manager before?
I think
You know, okay, all right, we'll split that hair. It's fine. Yeah. Mhm.
like plan and stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm finding I'm in a work culture where I'm picking up signals where it's obvious I'm a more junior developer compared to like all of the other teams being architects with decades of experience. So I feel as though some of the technical questions, maybe I'm pitching them the wrong way and it's possibly being dismissed or maybe like overexposing vulnerabilities. And so it's not getting conversations I would hope. How should I adapt?
So basically, the conversation for the questions for the folks online is that a person with a background that they're not junior in working, they're just junior in this role with an extensive project management background. They're asking questions of the more senior folks, and they're getting kind of maybe a little bit of cold shoulder on the questions. So the question I ask is, whose vulnerabilities are you exposing, yours or theirs? Right? Because if you're exposing your vulnerabilities, that's usually going to be okay. Like, hey, I don't know enough. And if you have seniors that are worth their salt, they're going to be able to help you out. If you're exposing their vulnerabilities, that's a different story, right? And it's important to note because you're exposing their vulnerabilities, that's context you need. That's the political landscape. It's great context, but also you have to understand it's not you that's the problem, right? And when it's not you that's the problem, you're going to need to probably find a way to get your answers outside of them, or to at least make it known that you asked the question, right? Right. Because then when you do find the answer, you document it, right? And you know, everybody gets a drink from the well, but the well has your name on it. I'm gonna come over here before I go. Let me get you, and then I'm gonna get you, and then I'll come back to you. Oh, okay. So the question was, what was the context for me getting into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? So I am, first and foremost, profoundly ADHD, like profoundly. And not all the meds work on me. And the ones that do work on me make me feel real bad, right? So the thing that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu does for me, and I've tried a lot of things, whether it's cycling, whether it's, you know, weightlifting, all stuff like that. The thing that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu does for me is the only thing I can do where I can naturally single thread, right? So when I'm on the mat and a 350-pound dude has his knee on my belly and is sweating into my mouth, that's the only thing I'm thinking about. Literally, nothing else exists but that moment, and I am so grateful for it. So as I go, like the ritual of going in, you know, taking off the outside clothes and putting on my gi and tying the belt, and bowing onto the mat and everything like that, all the other threads start to go away. All the other threads start to go away. And in that moment, that's it. Nothing exists off that mat. And it's gorgeous, right? So that's what keeps me resilient. Also, it gets me in shape and I can choke people, right? And that's fun too. It is, but it's not. It's the chest thing. You constantly have to think in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's not just a physical activity. It's a very, very, very strategic and cerebral activity. That's why nerds are real good at it. So if you look at average dangerous purple belt as somebody that looks like you're going to see them at doing Warhammer at a comic shop. I'm just saying, like they're the ones that surprise you. So like you look for like a skinny person with glasses, but they got ears like this. Don't mess with them. All right. Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it. Uh-huh. Yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up. So Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was brought into existence by the Gracie family back in like the 30s. Elio Gracie, Carlos Gracie, and Carlson Gracie, right? They were, by all accounts, small dudes, right? But they were fighting in judo against very large Japanese judokas, right? We're talking like 300 pounds. These guys are walking around at 150, right? Now, there's the concept back then, less so now, but more so then, called Newaza, which is the ground fighting, right? So now judo kind of ends as soon as Ippon. As soon as I throw you to the ground, your back hits the ground, fight's over, right? Not back then. They had Newaza, which is ground fighting. They weren't going to overpower these guys. There's no way they're going to overpower these guys. If 350-pound dude gets on you, right, that's where you are, right? But they developed a set of techniques which help them neutralize those differences between size and strength. It is those techniques that became Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It is why Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is so effective, like as self-defense, stuff like that. So if you put me on my back, I'm not in danger. You are, right? I'm 49. My face gets, I fight 5-6 days a week. I'm pretty, right? Now I do spend a lot. My skincare routine is not cheap, right? But those techniques keep me safe, right? And what I think is important about that is because I talk a lot about the differences between guys that like to fight, who want to fight to win, guys that want to fight to be good, right? Guys who fight to win, usually ugly, right? Because they get beat up. They don't know, they won't tap, right? They'd rather get scarred up, look like a warrior, blah, 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 and then die at 40, right? Because they're juiced up and like just all jacked up, right? Because they broke their bodies, right? I want to get good. Getting good is a long-term goal, right? You don't get good in 3 years. You know what I'm saying? You get good over a lifetime, and it never stops. So how do I keep training? So I tap. Hey man, that hurts. I'm going to stop. And so Royce Gracie spent a lot of time not winning at first, but tapping. So you can learn, right? His ego keeps him pretty. Or the lack of ego keeps him pretty, I should say. I'm going to go here and then come back to you because he hasn't asked one yet. What you got? Izzy, did you have your hand up?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
So, not necessarily a question, but kind of a concept,
Mhm.
different people. Then, I feel like that it's good to be vocal with your colleagues and share your opinion. Sometimes I just have an issue when I feel that I have to, nice shirt, I like your shoes, like to stop them off before we can start talking about business. My issue is, this is your job. You're a grown man, grown woman, whatever. I need to go around the bush. If you're an NXGS developer and we have an issue, that's your role. And I go, hey, we have this issue. Why do we need to go around our elbow to get to our wrist? Get straight to business.
So the question is just for the people online, it's like, why do you have to have like, the questions about not what the issue is, right? And if the first time you speak to that junior developer or that developer is when you have an issue, you fucked up, right? Because you should have spoken to them beforehand. You should already know their name. You should already know, what that picture is on their desk. You should already, you know what I'm saying? You should have already built that relationship. The first time you come to that person is, I have an issue with what you did. You're not going to start off on a good foot with that person. I don't care who you are, right? And yes, it is business. Yes, it is professional, but that person is not a machine. That is a human being, right? And so if you come to me first right off and you're going to pick at the thing that I produced, I'm going to feel some type of way about it because I don't know you. You know what I'm saying? We're not tight like that. We're not friends like that yet, right? But if you've even just said hi at the coffee machine, blah, 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 hey, blah, 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 or like, hey, your first couple days here, I just want to say hi, introduce myself, blah, blah, blah. Cool. All right. You've done a little bit of background work to introduce yourself. So I have some idea of who you are beyond now you got a problem with my code, right? And it's not efficient, seemingly, but it's way more efficient down the road because you've gotten context, right? You know about that person. You may know that person has ADHD. You may know that person, hey, they work in a weird time zone where they're working these hours. So like, yeah, you get them right first thing in the morning for them, it's actually 11 o'clock at night for you, or vice versa, right? Having that context is going to help you raise those issues more efficiently down the road. A lot less static. They already know what you're about. You already know what they're about, and you can get stuff done, right? So you're greasing the wheels for those contacts when you have problems by doing the stuff beforehand. 2 minutes? All right. 2 more minutes. Let's get to you again.
Okay. So the stigma of being junior, whether that's in like your actual career or something that. There's definitely the like getting better at your craft involved, but there's something else to it as well. What is something else that you kind of found in your experience?
So for me, the thing about getting the stigma of being a junior, right? We call it white belts, right? Everyone expects a white belt to mess up. Like me as an upper belt, as a very high level belt, when I roll with white belts, the main thing I'm doing is protecting myself, right? I know I can submit them all day long, without a thing, but that white belt is nothing but elbows and knees and throwing stuff around and like again, I'm trying to say the moneymaker here, right? I'm not trying to get beat up, right? So if they get all weird and spazzy, oh, hey, tap, hey, just keep this under control, like, or you're gonna hurt yourself by trying to twist out of this submission, right? Like I'm gonna let it go. I don't have to win. I'm good. I don't have to win. I'm gonna let it go because you don't even know that you almost tore your ACL, but I do, right? So the stigma of being a junior comes to the seniors know that you are going to screw up. They know that, right? They're going to put you in the best position where you don't hurt yourself and you don't hurt others, right? When you are that junior, when you are that white belt, you have to be able to listen when that brown belt says like, look, you think you got out of that submission because you got out of that submission. No, I let it go because I almost tore your rotator cuff, right? You need to take that advice and understand it's not their ego. They're there because they don't have an ego anymore. They lost that ego when they're a white belt. That's why they're a brown belt. White belts with egos never become blue belts. You know what I'm saying? If you're that junior dev and you can't set your ego aside, you're not going to be a senior dev. Yeah. At that time? All right. They're saying we got to go. So, all right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.